Today we're moving on from Isunga and Chibali south to the Bwindi Forest, where we'll be based for our planned gorilla encounter. It's about 250 kilometres with a mix of paved and unpaved roads. Google estimates 5.5 hours for the trip, which sounds about right. On the way we'll cross the equator into the southern hemisphere. As I mentioned in the previous video, we had lunch at the Kanyanchu Visitor Centre in Chibali Forest, then all on board the green machine for the trip south. Robert mentioned that we might see some other wildlife, including elephants, on the way. We backtracked from Chibali to the turn-off to Isunga and then took a scenic shortcut through Kasenda to the main highway. In this area of the world, scenic means scenic. The fertility of the land is amazing. What looks like jungle is people's farms and gardens where they grow all sorts of crops from bananas to vanilla orchids. There are lots of small crater lakes tucked away in the rolling hills, some with small beaches. It's a very beautiful landscape. Eventually we emerge onto the A109, which is the main highway south. It's a good paved road, but with a lot of trucks. But as the sign says, there's no hurry in Africa, so Robert just negotiates the traffic and south we go. But before we hit the equator, Robert pulls over and points out some elephants he spotted in the middle distance. I don't know how he does it, but the traffic was a bit quiet at the time. These are the first wild elephants I've ever seen, and the first African elephants. Gee, they are big. Their size and nearness drives home that this is not a zoo. There are no bars or fences between us and them, and not understanding how they behave leaves you feeling a bit exposed. A bit further on, at the southern side of Kikarongo, we cross the equator. We slowed down a bit to see if anyone could get exactly 0 degrees latitude on their phone. I had to throw cold water on the whole thing by pointing out that a phone GPS would not be accurate enough, especially in a car. It's a bit of a letdown here because the Equator Monument is actually a few hundred metres south of the equator. If you're interested, the equator runs through the traffic island on the south side of the intersection of the Fort Portal Mponde Road and the Mbabara Kasese Road, basically across the triangle between the slip road and the intersection. We're going to stop at the equator on a different road when we head back north to Kampala in a few days' time. Robert says the monument there is right on the button. We shall see. So we're now officially in the southern hemisphere. Yep, just about back home. See, look how the landscape's changed. Shortly after, we cross the Kazinga Channel, which connects Lakes George and Edward. The Semliki River drains from Lake Edward to Lake Albert and then exits Lake Albert as the White Nile. Along with the nearby Lake Victoria, which is still some distance to our east, this area is, for some reason, called the Great Lakes region. So this is a channel between Lake Edward and Lake George?
George is this side and Lake Edward is this side.
This place is actually very nice. It's packed with wildlife.
You see this placard here?
Yeah, that part, this bridge.
Look at this
Which
bridge.
is formed part of
This bridge.
Yep.
an emergency, something like that.
Bridge in London in the war and...
54.
Yep.
So you can see elephants, hippos and loads of birds. There's loads of
Oh, pelicans over there.
crocodiles.
Yep. Close to the southern bank of the channel, Robert sees another elephant, this time a bit closer to the road. There's a dirt track here and we can get closer. I have to admit that I'm sweating it a bit. This is no zoo and there's no fence, as I said before, and this is the biggest elephant I've ever seen. We then climbed the escarpment that had been looming up in front of us, back into the hills again. At the top we stopped for a break and enjoy the view. You can see back along the road and into the northern hemisphere across the Queen Elizabeth National Park. If you look carefully you can spot elephants grazing out on the plains. Having binoculars helps a bit with that. As we pass in and out of patches of rain, Robert tells us there's a bit of a change of route. There's been heavy rain along one of the roads he planned to take, and when that happens the trucks get bogged and you can be stuck for hours. I'm not exactly sure of the route we took, but along the way we passed through several bustling towns. In this one the market's on.
So the closest.
We descended down into a gorge with a brown rushing river at the bottom. Though it was an unpaved road, there was a concrete bridge across, and then it was up the other side along the wet, muddy road. We drove on into the dark. I'm glad Robert was driving. Even on these small roads there was a lot of traffic, mainly small motorcycles, some with lights, some cars, and lots of pedestrians. In one place there was a massive mud hole on a steep bend we and a lot of motorcycles had to negotiate. Long story short, we got there in the end. When we had phone coverage, Robert was talking to the lodge, so when we got there after 8 p.m. they had hot food for us. He even took orders for what main course we wanted. Now that is 6-star service. When we arrived, we were shown to our rooms, and in the moonlight we went to dinner in the lodge, tired but happy to arrive after a long trek. Tomorrow we have our one and only appointment with the gorillas. The next morning we got up early. It was surprisingly cool. As we walked down for breakfast, I looked at the hills surrounding Buhoma and our accommodation at Ride for a Woman.
So this is where we're staying. We're not in Bwindi, in Buhoma or something like that. Clear little mountain stream running down there. Again, quite high, like we were in the Chimp territory. Cold enough you can see your breath. Today we're off in search of gorillas, and this is the kind of country we find ourselves in. It's very, very hilly, and we're off into the Bwindi Impenetrable Forest Reserve. Oh, bird up there. To see if we can spot gorillas. Yeah. That white flower there is ginger. That's a little unit there. That red flower is ginger. Yep, see what we can manage. I think it's going to be tough.
I was hoping we were not going to have to climb up slopes like that to get to the Bwindi forest. Turns out I was wrong. Up there is where the forest and the gorillas are.
On the video, as steep as they actually are, but they're very steep. And there's our little van that we've been moving around in. Man, the places, the roads and everything we've been, the mud holes and everything that we've got through with that.
We topped up with a hearty breakfast, discussing the morning ahead with Renato, who's done this before. I think we were all nervous, me because at over 65 years old, was I up to this if we had to climb those hills, and Angela because of her bad hip. We had both put in training for today, but we live in a virtual flatland compared to this. After breakfast, it was off to Batwa, which turns out to be the village next door, and the Bwindi Forest National Park HQ, for finalising our permits, our briefing on the do's and don'ts when in company of the gorillas, and our assignment to a gorilla group. While we were waiting for paperwork and group allocations, the ladies from Ride for a Woman treated us to some of the local dances and songs. The dancers would make great fun aerobic sessions. Afterwards, we were given the details of our allocated group. We would be visiting the Habanyanya group, who are currently at the edge of the forest about 13 kilometres away. Robert would be able to drive us the first 10 kilometres, but then it would be leg power up the hills to the forest from there. The road was generally pretty good, but some steep stretches had washed out a bit. Not a problem for Robert and the green machine though.
Yeah, because they're very, very good at marketing. Because of the density, so it's a very active forest.
We started the climb through the fields on the lower slopes of the hills. Gee, they grow an awful lot of food here and in Uganda in general. We hired a couple of local people as porters to carry our packs and give us a hand when things got steep. We probably could have managed okay, but it certainly makes it easier and puts some money into the local economy. If people can make a living from the visitors the forest and the gorillas attract, then there's less motivation to clear it. Once things got steep, I had to stop filming. Porter or no porter, it was an effort at times not to slip and go on your backside. This was the part Angela was worried about, but she powered through it slow and steady and made it to the top, incidentally giving the rest of us time to stop and catch our breath that she didn't have.
Getting to be a long way up. Top of the first climb. Angela's coming along. It's a lot easier. I've got Emma to help me with my pack, which means my back doesn't get so hot, so it's more comfortable. It's warm when you're walking, but it's cool when you stop.
After a short walk along the top of the hill, we had to drop our packs and leave the porters. The Habanyanya family was nearby.
Going into Hidayah just here.
I think we were surprised by how close they actually were. Initially we crowded them a bit, then spread out and gave them more space. They didn't seem to mind. From this point we had 1 hour with them, then they would be left in peace for the rest of the day.
Hello. She went past there. She will pass there, so it's better to be together. Yeah, you'll see him passing. Let's be together this side.
Okay.
Yeah. So that when he's going, we take photos. So it's better you come around. Yeah, come and join us this side. Because you're getting right in the photos.
It's a spot difference.
That is so much closer. That is so close.
The whole family was just feeding and doing their own thing. The silverback was attentive, laid back, but keeping an eye on the family and us. A bit later he would put on a bit of a display, snapping a small branch off a tree in a practice charge, not looking at anybody but just letting us know who was boss here. Even though he was regarded as not large for a silverback, he was big and muscular, not to be messed with. This one on the right is a big lad. He's not a silverback, but boy, he's big. There was a mother with a small baby about a year old. Cuteness incarnate and with a fair bit of growing to do. Baby's about a year old. Oops. Bit of a not happy Jan.
That is, silverback is 43 years. That's dominant.
How old? Around 12.
watching the other people, the porters.
He's really in charge, isn't he?
Yeah, he's the one in charge.
Sorry about the focus and everything. He's in charge. I can't tell him where to sit and how to pose. Probably weighs twice as much as me.
What's behind you? Get up.
At one stage, one of the young males decides to show us who is who and charges through us dragging a broken branch. A lot more aggressive than the silverback, who looks on with a yeah, right attitude.
They're showing off.
Once breakfast has been eaten, some of the youngsters start playing.
So let's see. Two of you extend this side.
Off to one side, one of the larger gorillas is tearing the bark off a eucalyptus tree and eating the bark and maybe termites as well. Could be he. I'm presuming this is one of the adolescent male blackbacks. He's certainly big enough. Likes the taste of the eucalyptus oil. Eucalyptus? Yes, we're not in the Bwindi Forest proper, but we're in a eucalyptus plantation and the forest merge. It was a bit of a disappointment that I didn't get to see the Bwindi Forest proper. I mean, how impenetrable is it really? Maybe if there can be a next time.
The eucalyptus with the way he's licking his fingers like that. Or maybe he's getting termites.
One hour with the family goes all too fast. We have to pick up our bags and leave them in peace. The trip on the way down has a lot more chatter than the slog up the hill. Going down was hard, but we are buoyed up by what we just experienced. Seeing and hearing the gorillas so close, being allowed by them to share their space on their terms. Angela's porter has been allowed to come to the gorillas with her. He's never seen the Engagi, as the gorillas are known locally, before, and he looks as fascinated as us.
Don't get me wrong, I like helicopter rides, but not under that situation.
And it is so big.
Yeah. You don't get to experience anything then. You don't get to meet you. So beautiful, isn't it?
We have nothing at home that looks like this.
There's a sweet little tonight. They tried to put a hot water bottle in my bed last night and I had to tell them no.
Once back at the drop-off point, we paid and thanked our porters and drove back to the Bwindi Forest Park HQ to sign out. The next stop was to check out the shops just outside the entrance and pick up some merch. I got a hoodie for those cold nights of astrophotography. It will always remind me that I was there and was in my own little wildlife documentary. Now when I see mountain gorillas on some documentary channel, I know what it was like to be there. Relieved, we head back to our digs at Ride for a Woman for lunch, a gin and tonic, and to sort out pictures. In the afternoon we get a good show of mammatus clouds and then tropical mountain rain. Afternoon rain. Closing the curtains. It's quite cool. I think it's raining. I'm really happy we're not out in the forest in this. The gorillas are the last of our specific targets, and we've scored 3 out of 3. Tomorrow we head back towards Kampala, but we aren't finished yet. There's another destination that Renato and Robert know that will be our last stopover. All I know is that there is a game drive and a boat trip involved. I'm intrigued. I can't end this video without a special shout out to our porters and the Bwindi Porters Association. They turned a possible failure to manage the terrain into a success for us and an experience we'll never forget.